Hello everyone, welcome or welcome back. My name is Anna and today I'm going to be tier ranking the 20 books that I've read from January to April. So since I started my channel at the beginning of May, I thought that this would be a easy and fun way to catch you guys up on what I've read so far this year. So I have my little tier list here. I'm hoping and praying that this screen recording is working, because if it's not, I'm just going to scrap this whole video. But okay, I think first things first, we're going to need to name these categories. So we have 5 here, which would, in my mind, essentially correlate to like 5-star, 4-star, 3, 2, 1. But I think I'm going to do it maybe a little bit differently. So in S tier, we're going to put straight up bangers. I don't think that these titles are going to be very creative, but I'm thinking these are the best of the best, like the new all-time favorites, the kinds of books you just finish and you're like, yeah, this freaking hit. This is why I love to read. And as I was looking at these, I think the next step down has to be like quietly devastating, because a lot of these I was thinking are just exactly that. They're quietly devastating. They're really good books. I don't know if I finished them with a sense of like energy, but I do finish them with a sense of love for literature, and I spelled devastating wrong. How embarrassing. I think that that's one of those words that I just am not good at spelling. Like convenience, I never can spell convenience right. That is the one that always trips me up and I just avoid using it. I think for B tier, I'm gonna do learned something new. Because as you're looking down below, a lot of these are nonfiction books, particularly like nonfiction where it's actually, I was going to say nonfiction where it's teaching you something, but I think we still learn things from memoirs and stuff. But like, I'm seeing Clamor down here and A Black Queer History of the United States, not to spoil anything. I just don't really know how to rate like things that are purely like teaching me something new type of nonfiction. So I think having a category for that will be good. C tier, I'm going to put fine but forgettable. So these are the books where even if you ask me today, I'd be like, I don't really remember what happened and I don't really care. Like it was fine. Not necessarily bad, like it was a fine enough time, but I'm not necessarily going to recommend that one. And then D, I think I'm going to put You Disappoint Me. These are going to be just the stinkers of the year so far. All right, jumping into it, I'm feeling like this is gonna end up being a little harsh, mostly because of the categories that I've created. But I will go ahead and say the majority of the books that I've read so far this year have been like 3 stars and up. Like a lot of them are just fine. There's only a few that I really didn't like. And I have all this preface to say, I think that 2000s Made Me Gay is gonna have to go in fine but forgettable. I think it was fine. I think it's a book I'm not really going to think about that much anymore. As you might be able to guess by the title, this is an essay collection about different pieces of media from the 2000s that impacted the author, and she is looking at them from a queer lens, talking about like how queerness, particularly I think, and especially lesbianism, were portrayed in the 2000s, and I think that's interesting. But I didn't really feel like I was getting anything new or in particularly insightful from this memoir slash essay collection. I thought it was just fine. Like it was fun to read about. It's not one that's gonna really stick with me if I'm being so blunt and so honest. The next one though, we have Vernon Subutex Volume 2. This is the second book in the Vernon Subutex trilogy. These books follow Vernon, who is an ex record shop owner after the death of Alex Bleach. So, Alex Bleach was a rock star who was like funding Vernon's life. And then, after Alex dies, Vernon is just kind of hopping from place to place, living with friends, different people. But also in the background, Alex Bleach had these videotapes that everybody wants to get their hands on, and I really loved volume 1. Like it was so good. Each chapter follows a different person in the story, and it almost reminds me of A Visit from the Goon Squad, which I thought was a fine book, but this just spoke to me so much more. And I think volume 2 ramps it up even more. We're already connected with these characters and are beginning to connect the dots of the web, that like how they're all intersecting, and it's just so much fun. Every character in this is just so fun. It's translated from French, So it's all about like modern Paris. It's I don't know. I am a sucker for these books. I just like gulp them down. They're so much fun. So obviously this is gonna go not in quietly devastating, but in bangers. It is a 5-star read. I'm so excited to read the third installment, but I almost am like wanting to hold off on it because I don't want the trilogy to be over yet. I don't know if my mic is picking it up, but my cat is laying here purring, by the way, and she purrs so loud. So if you hear that, I apologize, but I'm also not that sorry. The next book we have here is A Working Life by Eileen Miles. I believe this is their latest poetry collection, and I think it's the third or the fourth that I've read. A lot of the poems in here are talking about very modern topics, like there are poems about COVID and about Trump and things like that. And I feel like, not to say that that took me out of it because it's a poetry collection. I think this is still an extremely solid piece of work, but is maybe like it didn't hit me as much as some of Miles' other collections and other poems, but it's still very good. I think I'm going to timidly put it in quietly devastating. I don't know if it was, there were some. Actually, I take that back. I was going to say I don't know if it's quite devastating, but I think thinking about the current state of the world is pretty devastating. It does make me pretty sad, which this collection deals with quite a bit. So I think that's actually a pretty apt spot for it. The next book we have is Black Owned. This is a nonfiction book about the history of several Black bookstores within the United States from when they were first founded up to present day. I thought it was very interesting to learn about how many of these bookstores are linked. Some owners will start at one and then someone works there and then they build their own, and just the like collective Black bookstore community. Also, obviously, it's talking a lot about the political history of Black bookstores and the way that these places were targeted, because obviously, like, knowledge is power. The people in power don't want us to be knowledgeable. So, you know, a lot of these Black bookstores were highly targeted, which was interesting to read about, also very sad. I am going to put this and learn something new. There was a lot that I had just never known about that I was exposed to in this book, so that was great. Next, we have Pick a Color. This is a book that I heard the premise of and went out literally that day and purchased because I had like some Barnes and Noble credit. I was like, let me get this book for like $5 right now because I need to read it ASAP. So I, outside of books and movies, I love nails. I make my own press on nails. Even before that, I would go get really extravagant nails done. Like, I don't know, I love beauty. I love nails, especially. And so, a book set in a nail salon, I was like, I have to read this, especially like a literary fiction book. And I'm sad to say, I don't think it was necessarily disappointing, but I think I really overhyped it for myself in my mind. And I don't know exactly what I expected it to be, but I think it was mostly like it was just fun. You know, it is really just a day in the life of this nail salon owner and a day in the life of all the people that work at the salon. And I think maybe the fact that it's set within a single day is to its detriment because we don't dive very deeply into any of the characters. It's all very surface level. And I do think there are interesting things explored about like paying people for a service, working in the service industry, particularly like the beauty industry, people coming in and they're entitled to your time and you're providing these services to them, but you don't get them yourself, you know, things like that. But honestly, like there was just something missing. And there was also a lot of backstory that was added in, but never really explored upon. And I'm sure like it had thematic significance, but I wasn't really connecting the dots as to what that significance really could be. It kind of felt like this backstory was there just to add to the page count almost. So I enjoyed it and I think I'm going to keep it on my shelf because I like owning a book about nails, to be honest. So, but mostly I think it was forgettable. Like, this is a solid 3-star book. It's not terrible, it's not great. I'm glad that I read it. I'm glad that there is a book about the nail industry to some extent that exists. If you guys know any other like literary fiction or even nonfiction about like nail salons, nails, anything, let me know because I feel like we're getting so many books right now about the beauty industry and in particular like the skincare industry, which makes sense. I feel like there's a lot to explore there, but I just love nails. I want to I want to read about nails. Next up, we have a Black queer history of the United States, and I feel like I kind of spoiled where this one is going to go, so we're going to go ahead and just drop it into learn something new. This is, again, as the title suggests, a Black queer history of the United States. I listened to this book on audio, and I'm not going to necessarily say that that was a mistake, but I do think that this book is very informative. It reads more like a textbook, I would say, than like a memoir or some other nonfiction that I've read. It's very dry, which is fine. Like I learned a lot. I learned about, Black queer historical figures that I had never heard of before, but I think I might have needed to read it on paper to fully process everything that was being presented to me, to be totally honest with you. So I did learn something new. I think maybe one day I will get a physical copy and give it a reread. So I'm actually like processing completely what I'm reading, but I didn't enjoy it. Next, we have The Guest Cat. This is a Japanese novella about this couple who their neighbor's cat will like come into their house at night, and they just develop this friendship and this relationship with this cat in a weird way and become very close to it. I'm going to put it in quietly devastating. I think it's very reflective, and it's interesting to think about the relationship that you have with an animal that isn't necessarily your own. And I think the husband and wife in this book like really start to care for this cat and almost see it like they know it's not theirs, but there's just a deep care for it. So I think that's a sweet thing to explore. I think it was worth the read. It's like 100 pages if I remember correctly, and I don't know if you can tell. I am a cat lady for sure. Like, I have one cat right here by my tripod asleep, and I have another cat right beside me. I love cats. I think I will have cats for my entire life. Most things with a cat, I will be sold, even if it's a little corny. All right, we have another nonfiction on the list, and this is Wintering by Catherine May. The premise of this book is it's about the value of rest and relaxation and taking time when you have something traumatic happen to you, which I can respect. One of my favorite books of all time, or at least one of my favorite nonfiction books, is How to Do Nothing. I think that book really reframed just how I view the world and how I view social media and how I view rest. So I thought that this would be similar to that. But I gotta be honest, I hated this book. It's really just the author going around and being like, yeah, this sad thing happened to me, so I just went on a trip to Iceland, and this other bad thing happened to me, so I went on this other trip, and we all need to relax, and I learned all this stuff looking at the ice and the water and whatever. But she never really comes to any conclusions that you couldn't just come up with on your own, like experiencing the world as a normal person who isn't like rich and going on all these vacations. I don't know. It felt extremely out of touch. I learned nothing. It felt like a waste of time. The author got on my last freaking nerve. Like, this is my least favorite book of the year so far, if I'm being so for real. So obviously it's going into You Disappoint Me. I was not a fan. All right, we have yet another nonfiction book. This is a memoir by Sasha Bonet called The Water Bearers, and it's honestly about Sasha Bonet, her experience as a mother, and then her relationship with her mother and her mother's relationship with her grandmother. So obviously, it's dealing with generational trauma and how the way that our parents were treated affects how they treat us, and thus affects how we treat our children, and goes even deeper than that. I really enjoyed this book. I am a sucker for anything that talks about the themes and complexities of motherhood, because I got some mommy issues, honestly. So I'm gonna put this in quietly devastating. I think this is one of my favorite nonfiction books I've read so far this year. I really enjoyed it. The audiobook was great too. Next on the list, we have I'm a Fan by Sheena Patel. I think that this book has become like this book is very divisive, I would say, in the weird girl literary fiction side of the book internet. It follows a woman who is cheating on her boyfriend, and she becomes obsessed with the other partner of the man who she's cheating on her boyfriend with. It's a story of obsession, and she's both obsessed with this other woman and obsessed with the man who she's cheating on her boyfriend with. And all of that is well and good, and all of that is very interesting. But the longer that I read this book, the more I was like, it is saying the same thing over and 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 over. And I get what it's trying to do, but I don't think that it does it very successfully. I love a satirical book. I love a book about a terrible woman. I love a book that honestly is about obsession. This book, if I'm being so for real, it was just annoying. And I feel like it doesn't go anywhere. I wasn't a fan. That's what I'll say. So this is going to go and you disappoint me. I was really hoping that I would be on the like enjoying it side of the divide, but I did not. It was not for me. Next, we have Filthy Animals by Brandon Taylor. This is a collection of short stories. I had previously read Real Life, and I think that this short story collection is very similar in tone. Brandon Taylor really has a knack for making you depressed. Like, all of the characters he writes about are so complex, but they're all so deeply sad. And it just makes you so sad. And they all have these traumas that feel so real and relatable, and you can understand where they're coming from, but they're also all kind of like evil and manipulative towards each other. Maybe not all of them, but there are these different short stories, obviously, but interconnected with those is the story of this college student who kind of gets involved with this other couple that he meets at a party, and the power dynamics there are so interesting. That was fun to explore. And then the other stories too, where just each one like kind of rips your heart out, and it just feels like there's a black cloud over all of these characters, but in a way that is enjoyable to read. And I think Brandon Taylor is a master of his craft for sure. Obviously, this is going to go in Quietly Devastating. I really enjoyed it. I want to read The Late Americans. I think that's his latest novel. So I got to get on that one. Next on the list, we have A Woman Is No Man. This book follows several generations of Palestinian women, but is primarily focused on a mother and a daughter. And it kind of goes back and forth between when the mother was around the daughter's age to the daughter now present day, who I believe in the book is like maybe 16 to 18, somewhere in there. So we find out early on in the book that the mother is no longer in the daughter's lives, that both of the parents had died. So as we're going back and forth between these perspectives, it's kind of piecing together what happened there. I think similar to The Water Bearers, this is also a book about generational trauma, but even further than that, I think it talks a lot about how sometimes we can repeat the same mistakes as our parents, or something is so deeply culturally ingrained in us. And even though we see the negative effects that it causes for ourselves or for other people, because it's so deeply ingrained within us, we like just see like that's just what you do, and we don't really think further than that necessarily. But I do think even though this book is very sad and devastating, there is a hopefulness at its core. And it was also so well written, and like despite the subject matter compulsively readable, you really deeply cared about all of these characters. And for that reason, it's going to go in bangers. It is one of my 5-star books of the year so far. Highly recommend. Next, we have Hot Girls with Balls. Amazing title. The premise of this book is we have two trans women who are pro volleyball players who have to play on the men's team. They're also dating. They play on two separate teams. And there's an event that happens that kind of sends their worlds up into a tizzy. But really, I would say the plot of this book is kind of all over the place. There's so much going on that it doesn't leave a lot of room for any of the themes that are being dissected here to really resonate. It's just jumping from one thing to another. And honestly, towards the end of the book, because it was dealing with so much, it just started to feel a little stupid. I was really excited for this one, but I don't think that it stuck the landing. I think it started to just get on my nerves. It really feels, honestly, if I'm being really honest, it feels like liberal Twitter in book form, which is fine. Someone will like it. It just wasn't for me. So for that reason, I'm going to put it and you disappoint me. My hand is starting to cramp because I don't have an actual mouse, so I'm just holding this here with the mouse pad, so my fingers are like stuck. Anyway, next on the list, we have Sisters of the Jungle. This is another nonfiction book, and it's exploring why so many women are in the field of primatology. It's one of the few sciences that are primarily like female driven. And if you don't know, primatology is what it sounds like. It's the study of primates. So think like Jane Goodall, Diane Fossey, Barute Galacticus. In this book, each chapter is following a different female primatologist. So we're looking at the trimates who I just mentioned, and then some other primatologists. And if you don't know, which why would you? I have developed a strong love for orangutans, especially, but monkeys in general, particularly since moving to San Diego and getting a San Diego Zoo membership and just walking around the zoo all the time. I love the orangutans. I know all their names at the San Diego Zoo. I feel like they're my friends. I have like a parasocial relationship with them. So I was so excited to read this book. And I think it just like heightened my love for primates and orangutans and all of it even more, and learning about these women and the fact that it's like a woman dominated science, it just like it boosts my enthusiasm that much more. So I am not quietly devastating. I am going to put this in bangers. This book led me to dive into Barute Galacticus. I'm hoping I'm saying her last name right. It's like a mouthful, so I'm sorry. A little bit more. She is almost like you could think of her as like the Jane Goodall of orangutans. I just love orangutans. So I really am appreciative of this book for like spearheading that path of learning for me. And also it was just fun. Okay, you can see my excitement right now. I don't even know how to talk about it. I love monkeys and orangutans and the study of primates so much. They're like little human beings. It's so cool. And it's also so sad what we're doing to their environments. But anyway, I'm going on a tangent right now. But yes, I would highly recommend this one. Honestly, I had never heard of this book before, but I was just scrolling through like my library's audiobook app and saw it, and I was like, I have to read this. It's both about like feminism and primatology. So, if you guys have any recommendations for books about primatology but orangutans especially, let me know. I have I think it's Reminders of Eden. I have one of Barute Galacticus's books coming on hold from the library, so I'm excited to read that. But if you know of any others, let me know. I'm so open to learning more about apes, monkeys, all of it. Next, we have Lifeform by Jenny Slate. This is Jenny Slate's second book, I believe. I was really a fan of Little Weirds. I thought that book was great, so I was excited to check this one out. This book is primarily set during COVID throughout Jenny Slate's pregnancy, and it's her reflecting on like becoming a mother and the isolation of COVID. I thought it was fine. I don't think it was as good as Little Weirds. I think maybe I just couldn't connect to it as much. And also, to be so for real, I think I just don't like COVID books that much. Hot Girls with Balls was also a COVID book, and I think the way that it handled COVID was like kind of eye roll inducing to me. I'm sorry. And even like A Working Life by Eileen Miles, I think it's one of my least favorite Eileen Miles collections because it's dealing with COVID. Like, I know a lot of people feel that way, and maybe in the future, when it's more distant from life now, I will feel differently. But yeah, I was not a huge fan of the COVID aspects of this book. I found Little Weirds highly relatable, and this one just didn't really resonate with me, which I don't necessarily need a book to resonate with me personally to enjoy it, but I think that's what like boosted Little Weirds from being like, oh, this is good, to being like, yeah, this is a like 4.5, 5-star book. So I'm gonna put Lifeform in fine but forgettable. I think it was fine. I think if you like Jenny Slate, it's worth a read, but it's not one that I'm gonna think about often. Can you believe it, you guys? We have another nonfiction book about how we all become our parents in the end, and that is We Survive the Night by Julian Brave Noisecat. This is a mix of memoir and history of Indigenous people in America and Canada. A lot of this book, particularly the memoir pieces, are Noisecat exploring his relationship with his father and, how as he's grown up, the negative qualities of his father and the positive qualities within his father he sees in himself, and that relationship that they have. I appreciated those aspects, and I do think that Noisecat, towards the end of the book, is reflecting a bit on how he is like his father and the mistakes that he makes. But I wish that reflection went a little bit deeper. I think that is what kind of prevented it from being like a favorite of the year to being like a 3.75 for me. I think it's hard with memoirs, especially when the author is fairly young. Like I felt similarly about I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I think sometimes it's hard when you're still so close to a situation to really assess how it's affected you. So I think for that reason, I'm going to put this and learn something new. And I did still enjoy it, and I would recommend it. I do think that Noise Cat talks a lot about, at least to me, lesser known things in Indigenous American history. That was great. Learned a lot. Enjoyed the personal insights and learning more about his family as well. I'm realizing I read a lot more nonfiction this year than I thought. I will usually listen to nonfiction on audiobooks and then I will read physically fiction. So I usually have both on the go, like a fiction and a nonfiction. And looking at them, like, wow, this is like 50-50. The next on the list, we have yet another nonfiction book, and this is Clamor. This book is about how the world is louder than it ever has been. And like when I say louder, I mean literally louder. There's more noise, there's more traffic, there's more planes flying overhead. And even further than that, it really talks about who is affected by this noise pollution, right? A lot of times it is, lower income communities, communities of people of color who get the short end of the stick, who have to live in these areas that are so loud, like right by the highway, or like planes flying super closely overhead. And something interesting that I learned in this book is when we think about sleep, we think, okay, well, it's really loud, but I sleep through the night, so it's fine. This stress that you get from the noise, even if you're not necessarily waking up, is making your sleep less deep and will have negative effects on your health overall. And, that's just one of the things that it touches on. It really talks about like health effects of being exposed to so much noise that you would just never think of, both like mental health and your physical health. So I thought this was a very interesting read. I'm obviously going to put it and learn something new. Next, we have a very beloved book, and that is Writers and Lovers by Lily King. I had purchased this book like back in 2022, and I just picked it up to read this year. And I will be honest, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about this book because a lot of times when everybody loves a book, I'm a contrarian at heart and it ends up not being my favorite. But when I started this book, I found it extremely readable. I really enjoyed it. It almost gave me like Gilmore Girls vibes in a way, which I'm not a huge Gilmore Girls fan, but it just felt very like fall time and cozy. I never said what this book is about. So it is about a 31-year-old writer who, is trying to write her book. She has different lovers, as you might guess from the title, different men who come in and out of her life. And she's working as a waitress, and it starts off very slice of life, which I love a book about nothing. So I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the writing style. It's a very witty book, again, akin to Gilmore Girls. So the first half or like 2/3 of this book, I was on board. But I feel like the ending really soured it for me. Everything wraps up way too cleanly. I feel like there weren't any real lessons learned. And it's like everything that the main character wants, she just gets within the last 50 pages. I hate when books do that because it's like there's no stakes, there's nothing learned. I don't really feel like the character grew that much. It made me sad because again, the first 2/3 of the book I think were very promising and I really liked, but just how neatly the ending wrapped up felt very unrealistic. And I was like, oh, the rest of this book was such a sweet and realistic, also depiction of grief because the author's mother had died fairly recently before the book started, and was like a realistic depiction of what it's like to be a writer and to pursue your creative dreams even when maybe they don't make the most financial sense. The ending really soured it for me. I don't necessarily want to put it in You Disappoint Me because that feels harsh since I like the beginning. So I think I'm going to do Fine but Forgettable. I don't know if it's necessarily forgettable. I don't know if I'm going to forget how much the ending disappointed me, but I think that's the spot where it makes the most sense to keep it. We're down to the final two, you guys. We have Tramps Like Us by Joe Westmoreland. This is, I would say, like metafiction about Joe and his life growing up in like 80s ish, 70s, 80s, 90s. He's moving from, I can't remember exactly where, but like middle America, like Wisconsin, maybe somewhere up there, down to Florida, to New Orleans, and then finally lands in San Francisco. So I am a sucker for books about San Francisco during like the 80s and 70s. I enjoy learning about the history of it, but as you can imagine, with the time period in which this is set, the AIDS epidemic plays a pretty big role in this book, especially towards the latter half. And I think this book was so affecting for me because these characters and the people in this book reminded me of people that I know, like my friends, the people in my life. Like they felt like anybody that I would hang out with on a regular day. And so to see the devastation that just occurred almost randomly out of nowhere is heartbreaking. Spoiler alert, this is my favorite book of the year so far, and it's like the second book that I read. I am gonna put it in bangers. All right, last book, you guys, is Vladivostok Circus. So this book follows a fashion designer who is, I believe, just graduated from college, and she is going to create outfits for Russian gymnasts for a circus. And I feel like a lot of Eliza Shuadesipin, if I'm saying her name right, a lot of her books kind of remind me of Kelly Reichardt films in a way because they're very quiet and meditative, but also like punch you in the gut. She just has such a talent for creating atmosphere with this very, like, almost sparse language that's still somehow very poetic. Every word has a purpose, and this book is no different. It's a lot about the relationships between the gymnast and the fashion designer, and is just kind of going through, a few weeks in their life together. I'm going to put it in quietly devastating. I think it was worth the read. I, again, am a pretty big fan of Dusipin's writing, and I think this is the third novel of hers that I've read. So she has some gorgeous covers too. Like, not that she's designing them herself, but her books have some of my favorite covers ever. So that is the finished list. We have Bangers, Vernon Subutex 2, A Woman Is No Man, Sisters of the Jungle, and Tramps Like Us. And Quietly Devastating, we have A Working Life, The Guest Cat, The Water Bears, Filthy Animals, and Vladivostok Circus. Two animal books in there. Learn something new. We have some great nonfiction. We have Black Owned, A Black Queer History of the United States, We Survived the Night, and Clamor. And Fine But Forgettable, again, I think all these books were fine. Very solid 3-star books. We have The 2000s Made Me Gay, Pick a Color, Life Form, and Writers and Lovers. And then in the bottom tier, and You Disappoint Me, we have Wintering, I'm a Fan, and Hot Girls with Balls. I think so far it's been a pretty good reading year. I read some really good stuff. I'm excited for what the year brings. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you guys next time.